Okay, boys and girls, it's time for Ask the Experts. We are the MoneyWatch team. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large.
I'm Jack Otter, executive editor.
And boy, this is so exciting. We have a special guest star today. Special guest star is Ilyce Glink. Hello, Ilyce.
Hello, Jill.
And I'm so happy because Ilyce is basically the maven of anything that has to do with a house. Okay? Let me
Not cleaning it.
Well,
I don't know about cleaning it. Maybe everything else.
Okay, very good. I stand corrected. Let me do Ilyce's bio. It's so impressive. See, I'm glad, Megan, that I told you to print it out because it's very impressive. Ready? What's R stand for? Ilyce R. Glink.
Renee.
Okay, that doesn't seem particularly teasable, does it, Jack?
Not
really.
I'd take that as a diss.
No, I'm just saying.
it's
Jill
okay.
doesn't know you that well, but if I said R for Renee,
Yeah,
she'd still be going on about it.
The teasable part is that my name is spelled so insanely that there is no need for an R middle name to distinguish myself from all the other Ilyce Glinks out there,
yes,
right?
Because it's a common name. Let me just point this out, that Ilyce spells her name Ilyce. What is up with that?
Good drugs when I was born. I had nothing to do with it.
But what were your parents thinking?
My mother was thinking she needed an I name for my grandma Ida. And as for the rest of it, she has always marched to the beat of a different drummer.
Oh, okay.
And I guess maybe she someday knew that I would want to be Googled and I would want to come right up.
Yes, she knew that. Okay,
She knew
I'm
that.
going to get to Ilyce's bio in one moment. But Jack, do you know that for the Jewish people, you may not know this, we like to name after dead relatives, right? So
Sure.
that's right. So that's the deal. So I am in Sunday school one day, and the rabbi is saying, everyone's named for somebody. So Ilyce would say, I'm named after
Saturday school?
Sunday school.
Okay.
No. Saturday you were praying. Sunday you went
Sabbath.
to learn about it.
Get on to it, man.
Oh, gosh.
You grew up in New York, remember? We're there, and they, Ilyce would say, I'm Ilyce. It's spelled with an I. I'm named after my grandmother, Ida, right? So they get to me, and the rabbi says, Jill, who are you named after? Like, is there a grandpa Jacob? Is there a J name? I said, I wasn't named after a dead relative. And he goes, what do you mean? That's the tradition. Tradition. I said, well, my parents were not really into that whole thing. So they decided they wanted to name us after what my father described as the best-looking Jewish actresses of the time. So my sister is Kim after Kim Novak, and I am Jill after Jill St. John. And that damned me for religious school for the rest of my life. Okay, Ilyce R. Glink is an award-winning, nationally syndicated columnist, best-selling author, and radio talk show host who also hosts Expert Real Estate Tips, an internet video show. We should put a link to that somewhere, right? Okay. She owns and operates several websites, including thinkglink.com, which is hard to say, expertrealestatetips.com, lawproblems.com, and housetask.com, as well as Think Glink Publishing, LLC, a privately held company that provides consulting services as well as editorial content and video for companies and nonprofit organizations. An in-demand speaker, she appears frequently on CNN, CNBC, NPR, and in local media outlets across the country. Most importantly, missing from her bio is, of course, that Ilyce is a superstar blogger at MoneyWatch.com. MoneyWatch.com. Okay. And she is can I say the name of your book?
Sure.
That's so new book coming out called Buy, Close, Move In. Good title.
Thank you.
Okay, Ilyce. Thank God you're here.
Listen, I feel like I need to sleep more after listening to all that. I don't know who's doing all that
Who
stuff.
is that?
Who is that woman?
You are based not in New York. You're based in Chicago, is that right?
Yeah, I'm on the North Shore of Chicago.
Are you friends with Oprah?
No, but I've been on her show a number of times.
I didn't know that.
I have been. I have done
she
some.
still
I
came
have
here.
done some TV. It's true.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you friends with the Obamas?
No.
All right. Okay. Just wanted to see if you could get. Could you?
I
get us
know
an interview?
people. I know people who know people who know people who know him because we're all in Chicago, right? But no.
Okay.
Love her clothes though,
Mrs. Obama.
Mrs. Obama.
Interesting. Okay. My mother-in-law is like so down on the way she dresses. She doesn't think she's. I said because you know what, my mother-in-law is 86 years old, so she wants everyone to look like Nancy Reagan and Chanel. It's ridiculous.
You know-
Okay, it's like time to move on. I love her,
Black
Ma.
dress.
Come on.
The black dress with the red was
Love
a
that with the
mistake.
gold. But I like. Oh, you mean that for
Yeah.
Michelle? Yeah, I mean because I loved the Nancy Reagan elegance. I must
Oh,
say.
sure.
Okay, now Ilyce, the housing numbers this week stunk.
I would say that is a pretty fair assessment. You know, my contention, and I was a little disappointed by the State of the Union and the fact that Obama spent all of 30 seconds, if that, on the mortgage mess that basically has been created. But we have a situation where the government has put the housing industry on life support. And there's just no other way to put it. We have the Fed spending $1.25 trillion, that is trillion with a T, on housing-backed securities, because basically nobody else in the world wants them. And why would they, after the mess that was created by the banks on Wall Street? Then you have, the IRS and the government giving you an $8,000 tax credit, my little pet thing on MoneyWatch, and the $6,500 trade-up or long-term homeowner tax credit. And what you've done, and then you've got, of course, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who now have a blank check to lose as much money as they can, which is billions of dollars. And if somebody could please explain to me why they're being traded on a stock market, I really have no idea why. So in my mind, the government has basically just put the housing industry on life support. And this spring, everything is supposed to start paring back. And so with all this massive infusion of trillions of dollars of capital, we've barely seen a budge in the numbers. In fact, the December numbers and November numbers were dreadful.
Well, now on that happy note, Jack.
Yeah.
So, Jack, Ilyce brings up a point that I think is quite interesting, which is the $1.25 trillion that the Fed is using to purchase basically 80% of mortgage-backed securities. And what happens at the end of March when that stops?
Well, I think this is time to cue your old friend Heartless Jack, because he will point out that what happens is maybe the housing market, like all markets, will revert to the actual price that it should be priced at. The reason it's on life support is because nobody wants to go where it would go if it didn't have all this government support. And I really don't mean to be heartless here, and I know it's an awful, awful situation for somebody who's underwater. I just heard from an old friend of mine whose parents bought in Vegas in 2003.
Ooh.
And they're still underwater.
And they're underwater now.
They're far underwater now.
Yeah.
Now, the only good news is it's their primary residence. They're not planning on going anywhere.
Well, that is true.
So it's not like it was speculative.
At least 1 in 4 people who have a mortgage are underwater.
Yes, it's about 28% at the moment. The number is fluctuating. The concerns that I have are sort of been expressed very well by Deutsche Bank at a remarkable landmark sort of study earlier this year that I wrote about on MoneyWatch, where they think that as many as 45 to 50% of all homeowners with mortgages will be underwater by the end of 2011. To get there, we're going to have to see another plunge in the value of homes. And it's interesting, you kind of think to yourself, well, how are we going to get there? And, I don't know. There are a bunch of doomsday scenarios that would get us there.
Great.
I just don't know that we will get there. So that, I guess, would be the silver linings. I don't necessarily think it's going to fall. And if it does fall, I think it's going to fall in the maybe 6 to 10 states that are at the top of the list for foreclosures. California, Arizona, you've got Florida, Nevada, Michigan. Illinois is number 6 on the list. Georgia, very, very high. And then you've got a smattering of others that come in and out of the top 10. But those 6 or 7 top states account for about 50% of all foreclosures, and the numbers there are looking worse and worse. The key thing is jobs, which I keep talking about, how, the whole job situation is just the underpinning of the real estate market. And if you don't have jobs, you don't have a real estate market.
And, it's interesting because, here we are talking, it's the day after the State of the Union, jobs taking center stage. And the reality is, in my humble opinion, let me channel some of Jack's darkness for a moment. And
I think Jack and I see the world similarly. We're going to have a little off ex parte meeting after this.
I mean, I'm a cynic, believe me. I just, it doesn't play well on TV. So the thing that's interesting about talking about jobs is that, it sort of seems crazy. We say, oh, we want to do jobs thing. Well, what was the $800 billion stimulus bill? It was just a waste. I mean, they really did not front load the bill. It wasn't about job creation. It was a lot of nonsense and a lot of pork. And that's funny that happens when you let Congress write rules and write a bill.
I just think my mind, I was listening to him say, we're going to have a jobs summit, we're going to have a jobs bill. And I think to myself, okay, you're $1 trillion by your own admission adding to the deficit. Who's going to pay for all of this? We are. So we're going to have another $1 trillion while you're cutting back and have the freeze and on 18% of the budget spent. It just was ridiculous. And I thought to myself, what a waste of an opportunity. Mm-hmm. What a waste of 60 votes in the Senate. This whole year has been, and maybe we didn't go off the deep end, but I'm just so disappointed in the way that jobs have sort of not it's still about the economy stupid. And I think somewhere along the way, that sign fell off the wall for the Democrats. And I think really Main Street, as I talk about it on the MoneyWatch blog, Main Street is suffering, and it's really sad.
Do you see certain pockets of improvement or silver lining around the country in the real estate market? Where's there good news? Come on, Ilyce, give us some good news for crying out loud.
Charlotte, not too bad. The good news is mostly no negative news.
Wait a second. You gave me one place in the entire country.
No, that was just
as
an
my good news?
example. Okay, so Charlotte.
How about the Upper West Side of New York City?
I don't get that micro. My sister lives in the Upper West Side of New York City, and I have to say that prices seem to be, maybe they're down 20-25% as opposed to 50-55% in a place like Las Vegas.
But I have a reason for that. I have a rationale around that whole thing. You want to know?
Does it have to do with big bank bonuses?
It has partially to do with that, but it also has to do with the good and the bad of co-op boards. Like if so many buildings, especially old historic buildings in New York, all over New York, are co-ops.
Yeah.
And co-ops have these like horrifying board procedural
You
process.
basically need a lot of cash to buy in a co-op.
Yes,
Sometimes they don't even let you have a mortgage.
In our co-op, it was you might have been able to get a 0% loan, but you had to put 30% down.
Right.
No matter what. So a lot of people tell me that that's actually been a big help in the New York real estate market.
Yeah, I think that it's some help, but really, if you can't afford your mortgage, even if you have 30% down, you can't afford your mortgage.
Good
so
point.
you lose your job. You lose your job. My brother-in-law worked for Lehman. Now he works for Barclay. It is what it is for a lot of bankers. I would say that you've seen some come down in prices in New York. I would have expected a little bit more, but New York and Miami to a lesser extent, because Miami's just overrun with condos. It's got like a 15-year supply of really fancy condos that it has to use up. But you've got, wherever you have an infusion of foreign buyers,
Yeah.
that's really important. And we've seen London hold up. Paris, to a certain extent, has held up. Hong Kong has held up. And now you've seen New York hold up. Washington, D.C. has been very strong. Actually, Washington, D.C. is sort of a bright spot. Sure, why not? Government jobs all over the place. And without that, government lobbyists and then government contractors. So Washington's been fine. But even in Miami, there have been pockets of very, very high-end stuff where you've seen Latin Americans come in full cash and buy in. And so you do have some pockets of bright spots.
Now,
Well, surprise, surprise, it's the old-fashioned economics. It's demand.
yeah.
And with these cities, it's not only foreigners. It's also if you are a businessman in Texas, sure, you might have a summer house somewhere, but your apartment is going to be in New York, or maybe there'd be a reason to be in Miami or Washington or something. But
Texas
so
is
it's global demand.
Texas as a whole state, honestly, has done relatively well. So not so bad.
So don't mess with Texas, as we like to say.
Houston, actually, it's interesting. I get a regular update from the Houston Board of Realtors, and they're just positive all the time. So we'll have to just see.
As opposed to those realtors who are negative all the time.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
no, they're realtors who now don't say anything.
Okay.
So that's the new negative.
Oh, okay, the new
The new negative.
The new negative is nothing.
That's
Okay, we're going to get to some questions here. So first off, this is Kathleen who writes, "My question is regarding our interest-only mortgage. Remember those? They seem so great. Almost 2.5 years after refinancing, the interest rate on our loan is 6.5%. Question: If I have $10,000 that I will not be needing in the foreseeable future, is sending that amount in with our next payment to help pay down the principal better than investing that same amount of money at current interest rates, which of course are much lower?" Hold on. It seems to me that not paying 6.5% on that $10,000 is akin to earning that same amount of interest. Am I wrong? Ilyce R. Glink, wrong or right?
No, you're right. I mean, if you prepay any loan, whether it's a credit card debt or a car loan or your home loan, you basically earn money at the net rate of interest. So for credit card debt, which is not deductible, you're paying 17%. You pay down your loan 17%. You've earned 17% on your money. Don't ask me why the mechanics of the numbers work, but they do. So just accept it, move on.
Okay, good.
When it comes to your mortgage, if you write off your loan, most people don't. Most people just take the standard deduction, which is over $10,000 right now. So if you don't itemize on your federal income tax return, yes, if you're 6.5%, that's what you'll earn if you put $10,000 down. And since most bank accounts are earning about 1.25%, yes, I think that's a very good, smart long-term move. Plus, if you're underwater, what you want to be doing is building it back so that you are at least par with your mortgage. It's just going to give you more options down the future, in the future, if you want to refinance.
She should keep in mind taxes, though. Any interest she earns on that $10,000, she's going to pay taxes on, so it's actually going to be a little bit of less than that in her pocket. And of course, there is the mortgage deduction issue. So if she does deduct her mortgage, she has to consider that.
Yes, because it's so easy to get 6.5% right now as an investor. Okay, let's move on. Jack, this one's for you, and I'm not giving you Hal's question. I'm saving that for Ilyce. Okay, Jack, you want Hal's question?
No, I'm kidding.
You sure?
We would take the whole show to read Hal's
Okay.
question.
Jackie,
You should read my mail. It takes forever.
Jackie from Florida. Florida. Sounds okay. That's Megan's notes. Sorry. I was about to do that. Can we have a shot of Megan, Roland? I don't believe my credit score is very bad right now. I'm glad you don't believe that.
Well, yeah.
I don't believe that I've lost X amount of dollars in the housing market. Okay. I don't believe my credit score is very bad right now, but what will happen when the bank serves me foreclosure papers? My question is, should I walk away now and start renting a home or apartment? My fear is that when they pull my credit report, I will be denied renting, or they will charge me a higher deposit fee because of the foreclosure. What is your opinion? Jack, from your friend Jackie in Florida, what do you have to say about that? I mean, she's obviously underwater and she's facing foreclosure. What do you think about this?
Well, I don't think that my soccer skills have gone down at all since college.
Yeah, I'm glad that you haven't thought that. Me neither. Glory days, baby.
Yeah, I would be worried about that. I would get my credit score immediately. And I would also get the bank on the phone. Ilyce might have some insight here. To what extent is she going to be able to negotiate this? At the very least, stall. Can she call them and say, look, if you foreclose me, you're going to lose, 25% of this? Can we do a short sale here? Can we do something else? So I think if she's reasonable, maybe she gets somebody like Jill Schlesinger
Yes.
to be a professional advisor to perhaps negotiate on her behalf. Whatever fee she pays, she might make up many times over. So I think she's got some options there. It's an interesting tactic to try to rent before getting foreclosed upon.
What do you think, Ilyce? She's going to, obviously foreclosure, like bankruptcy,
All right.
destroys your credit.
Let me jump in. First of all, if you're on the verge of foreclosure, you're already so far behind in your payments, your credit's destroyed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So her credit is trashed.
Okay.
There's nothing for her more. What might happen is
But
another...
she doesn't believe her credit score is bad.
Well,
I'm just
I'm a good
kidding.
soccer
Well,
player.
you know what? I think she should pull it. She should go to myfico.com or she should go to annualcreditreport.com. She's entitled to 3 free credit reports a year. She should pull the one from Equifax, and then she should pull the Equifax credit score, which will cost her about $9, and she should see exactly where her credit score is. I'm guessing that her credit score is really low and in bad shape. And so but her concern is actually right on, because what we're finding is that so many people who have been foreclosed on have such bad credit scores now, they're in the 400s, that when they go to rent a property, they can't. And so we're starting to see a generation of people who are unable to find basic living accommodations. Now, this more savvy property owners that I have been talking to, the ones in Georgia and the ones in Nevada who see this all the time, they look at why somebody went into foreclosure. Was it a job loss? Was it a medical bill? Was it a divorce? If there's like a real reason that is not continuing in the future, they're much more likely to rent to them, but the institutional renters aren't. And so the idea that she's going to rent first before the actual foreclosure papers, I've been hearing from people who are trying to buy homes before the foreclosure comes in.
Right.
Or they let their houses lapse because they're so far underwater after they've bought new property, and they're in non-recourse states. I just want to go to Jack's one point, though, just so everybody understands. When banks do short sales, they lose 20, 25%. When banks do foreclosures, they could lose up to 80, 90% of the value of the property. Knowing that, it's been documented, study after study. I'm at a complete loss to understand why banks aren't doing short sales nonstop, one after another, and moving forward. And the focus has really been on foreclosures. Maybe there just aren't enough buyers to do all these short sales, but I think the banks have really just badly mangled the situation. The government loan modification programs, I've written extensively about that on MoneyWatch. They're just a mess. A mess.
Okay, so let's. I know Hal's question we're going to leave till the end because it's just too much. But so
Poor Hal.
Hal, we're going to get you, I promise. But let's just go on with this. I spoke to somebody that was said basically completely off the record at a monster real estate investment company who said that after many discussions with the federal government, with Treasury, with HUD, they were begging to say, come on, part of the whole loan modification process has to be that you guys basically say to everybody, wipe out principal. That's how it's going to work. And so people say, to me, well, oh no, it's the companies that don't. It's not that the companies don't want it, but the White House is very much against that. Do you know that? That's the inside scoop because they said it creates moral hazard. I'm like, well, no. Actually, the moral hazard has already been is like come and gone. We're here. We got to deal with it. Let's get out of it.
That's not true. The banks do not want to reduce principal. They don't, because as long as they keep people paying, they'll pay forever. So the minute they start reducing principal, they've cut down their principal interest for years. I would disagree with that. The insiders I've seen at the bank are not talking about reducing principal. The Fed keeps talking about reducing principal. You've got the OCC talking about it, but the banks, to my face-to-face, to me, private off the record, are not talking about reducing principal.
But why is that then? Then why is someone on an investment side who's saying to me, yes, of course we know that because
the banks make more money. The banks make more money in foreclosure than they do by extending these loans. And the NPV, which I've also written about at MoneyWatch, the net present value calculation that the FDIC set up, that is on there's a helpline that one of my blogs has it, where you can actually read through and see the NPV calculation that they put your loan through. It is the bank's choice, their choice, whether to modify or to foreclose. And they all make more money with the fees in foreclosure than they do by modifying. There is no incentive for them to modify.
But then I get back to the issue. If we assume that a bank is just a pure capitalist actor, right? I just want to make as much money as possible. Then why go through the foreclosure process?
Because then they own the property. They get it all back.
No, they don't get it all. They have to go through the whole foreclosure process.
They do, but what they're trying to make the calculation on is with the fees that come out of the foreclosure sale.
Yeah.
Will they net more than if they allow the homeowner to stay in and pay at a reduced interest rate for X number of years? And the answer is, in most cases, foreclosure is going to be the smarter choice for the bank. And one of my MoneyWatch blogs was one of my 3 wishes for the new year is that the banks would just finally stop stringing people along, which is the worst of all things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 250 comments now in my MoneyWatch blog. Stop leaving people in loan modification hell and just foreclose on them already and let them start a new life. It's the waiting that's killing America.
Do you feel like there is some point at which people should absolutely positively just walk? If you owe more than a certain percent, do you have a formula in your head where you're like, just get out?
I have a really hard time telling people not to live up to the obligations they sign, although nobody on Wall Street seems to have trouble walking away. So I think everybody has to make their own decision. But I can say honestly that if you look at 10 million more families walking away from their loans in the next year or two, we're just going to have chaos and a major double-dip recession. And so I just, as a person who looks at the economy and what works, that just doesn't work in sort of a mass way. But I have to say, honestly, paying these loans and being in loan modification hell doesn't work either. And it doesn't work for the families. The banks have clearly figured it out for themselves. And it just really upsets me.
Well, since the banks are acting in their own best interest, even if it seems selfish and bad and all that, the only actor left, and the homeowners can't do anything, they're stuck. So what could the government do to solve this problem?
Well, I mean, obviously the government should sort of come in and mandate the whole principal reduction process. That's what I think seems like.
And why didn't they?
And so then I ask you that you're saying to me that you hear that they didn't want that. I'm hearing a conflicting story that the government, that there was absolute revulsion at that idea.
Well, there certainly is. The idea of breaking a contract is a big deal.
Right.
And there's I know a lot of money managers really think that that's an awful idea. But then we're stuck. I don't know how to get out of that problem.
Okay, so you guys just had a huge piece of property, a $5.5 billion property that just went back to the lenders.
Right.
Think those guys sleep at night?
I think
the guys who owned it, you think they care? Because their loan is set up the same way that homeowners' loans are set up. And when all else failed and they couldn't get the lenders to come to terms, they just said, here are the keys. It's mass jingle mail with 20,000 units or something in the Stuyvesant.
So Ilyce is talking about the Tishman Speyer foreclosure of the Peter Cooper Union and Stuyvesant Town complex in New York City, which they bought for $5.4 billion at the top of the market, which they financed with $4.5 billion, which is estimated to be worth $1.8 billion right now. Tishman had only $100 million of their own money at risk.
It's a great example of, remember when that story broke and everyone said, wow, that's the top. I mean, it was in the second graph of the story in the Times about it.
Right.
But here's the thing. Okay, so now I'm going to get back to financial planner Jill, like in my old life. if I had a client who came in and was so upside down and crazy, I'd have no problem saying, look, I know it's going to stink and it's going to, it's going to be terrible and you feel horrible, but for your family's sake, it makes more sense for you to walk away. I mean, we've already gone through, if someone walks in and they've already made the bad decision, then why shouldn't they just walk? I don't feel like that's like abrogating my responsibility. That's making a prudent, I already blew the first decision. I bought a house I couldn't afford.
Right.
Or I got unlucky. Let's also say that. But now I'm in this next place, which is, okay, I have to make a decision that's going to give me the best chance to succeed in the future.
Yeah.
Why can't I tell that person? I'm going to tell that person to
Tell
walk
it.
every time. Run, don't walk.
Yes. Yeah, at that point in time, they probably should. But I don't know if it's when you're 20% under, 30% under. I think there's a complication with, you can talk about 10% official unemployment, but really it's more like 20% unemployment. And then the next 20 to 30% are just earning less, all kinds. So if you're 50% are out of work or you're earning less, yes, you're going to make a different decision if you're 20% underwater or 40% underwater than somebody who still has a job, still wants that school district, and can still afford the payments.
All right. Now, I had to do Hal's question. I know you're giving me relax. They're not looking in here. So Megan is our producer, and she's very hyper concerned about the guys from CNET's 404 podcast coming in here. And you know what, Ilyce? You're so brilliant. We're going to keep you on longer. They'll wait.
Oh, my.
Okay. So let's all take a breath for a moment and get ready for this question.
I know hell is just overwrought, I have to say.
Okay, just everyone breathe. Take a deep yoga cleansing breath. So Hal is retired, and sources of income are Social Security and IRA annual deductions. I bet he means distributions.
He does. He means money he's taken out.
Mortgage balance of $100,000 with 14 years left on a 5.5% 20-year loan. He had $230,000 of his IRA and CDs that were yielding 4 to 5%.
Nice.
That's IRA. Okay. CDs have matured. Rates for CDs are now less than 2%.
Yep.
Ilyce, should he take the distribution from his IRA, pay the tax, and then use that net money to pay off his mortgage?
So he's in a situation where it gets a little bit complicated, because once you start withdrawing, I mean, the longer, you've read a shortened version of his question. And so the longer version would look at things like, how much is he actually earning? And as a financial planner, you would know this, right? Because how much he earns and how much his income level is will directly affect the amount of tax that he pays, and it could wipe out most of what he's actually getting from Social Security. So do you take the 1-year hit, but you really cut back on your cash flow situation? And I actually like that for most seniors. I like the idea that you're taking the money out, but you're really reducing the cost of living going forward. You're just going to have taxes and maintenance on the property. Now you're not going to have those, most baby boomers just have loans that go until they're 90. So right. I'm a big fan of that. My big concern for him is if you're going to take out $100,000, you're going to be left with $130,000. Even though your cost of living is lower, right, you're really not giving yourself much of a cushion. So, and also, if let's say this is the low point, right, because he took the hit like everybody else does, he has less money to grow over the next 10 years. He's only, he's not that old. So I'm leaning in the direction that he should take the money out, pay the taxes, one-time hit, lower his cash flow going forward, and then in the future, he won't take the tax hit on Social Security. What do you think?
I like that idea, and I always think that this is one of those great arguments for how a Roth can be so beautiful as you get older.
Yes.
Like, had this not been IRA, if this was a Roth conversion,
yep.
And now you have a decision, you can make a real, true financial decision, right? That you say, okay, I can pull my money out of my Roth IRA, not have to worry about taxes. Okay, it becomes so clear. And you know what? Based on, I'm giving a ballpark of his income, which is 33, hold on a second, and he's got Social Security. So, he's probably in the 15% tax bracket right now.
Right. And when he pulls all this out, he's going to bump up to what, 39%?
And so it may be, but are taxes going up in the future, And there's the other kind of unknown.
What about splitting it in 2s or 3s? This is really, so over the next 2-3 years, he takes out a smaller amount, lower tax hit, less tax, bite out of the Social Security, pays it off over 2 to 3 years,
And then I think his tax situation should be okay
Right.
over those few years. And I think he also gets the chance to see if there is some real recovery, gets a little juice in his portfolio.
Yep.
And, you know, he's right. He should not be buying CDs at 2% at this point.
Right. There's no point
Yeah,
in
he
doing
needs
that.
a new investment plan. I mean, his Social Security is a bond, and he's got CDs, and that's it. So he's got to take a long-term
I'm
plan
hoping
and
that
get a
his
little bit of
wife
risk
is
in there.
very wealthy. That's my hope for him.
Um,
You know, if that were the case, but for that. Now, Ilyce, what else do we need to know that we are not paying attention to because you are the goddess of everything housing mortgage related? What do we need to know right now before we black out here at the end of the show?
I would just say that if you really want to take advantage of the $8,000 tax credit or the $6,500 trade-up credit, get moving, because we're at the end of January, beginning of February. You have to have a contract done in hand, dated by April 30th. You've got to close by June 30th, and that's going to be a real trick. Let me tell you something. It may take you longer than 2 months to close. So I would back that up and say you better have a contract in place by April 15th, because everybody's going to be backed up, stacked up, and it's just going to take a really long time to close. And you don't want to be June 30th going, oh, we're not going to get it through till July 1st, and then you blow it. So back that up. Get it all ready and don't wait.
Okay, wait a second. On the way out, here's some predictions. Jack, what will mortgage rates be in the beginning of the second quarter? What will the 30-year be?
I can't see any scenario other than going up.
But give me come on.
So 30-year, maybe 5.4, 5.5, nothing
Ilyce
dramatic,
R.
but,
Glink, you concur?
5 to 5.5% by the middle of the year, maybe 5.5 to 5.75 by the end of the year. We have to see what happens when the Fed pulls back mortgage
And
buying
one more
securities.
prediction, maybe the real estate market gets hit so hard per Ilyce's predictions that you'll save more than $8,000 by waiting.
Oh.
Oh,
well,
see, now I'm going to
yeah.
have to come back. We're going to have to debate that.
All right, now I'm going to tell you, as someone who just closed on a house last week, I'm going to tell you this. If you can afford it, prices are really good, do your homework, read Ilyce's blog, because she's brilliant. Read every single story that Jack edits on MoneyWatch.com, because he's brilliant. And, stick around. Next time, Ask the Experts. We might drag Ilyce's butt back here from Chicago. However, if she comes, she will be bringing deep dish Chicago-style pizza for a pizza taste-off with New York thin crust.
Sounds good.
All right, Ilyce, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Jill. Thanks.
And,
Thank you, Jack.
And thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jill. Jack and Jill show. We love this. I'm Jill Schlesinger.
I'm Jack Otter.
Thanks for watching Ask the Experts here on MoneyWatch. I almost said Reality Check. We're going to do that next. Go to MoneyWatch.com for more information on all this and check out Ilyce's blog.